All right, everyone, get ready for today's deep dive. We're going to be getting into some electrifying territory because we're diving into electrosex.
That's right.
We're going to be giving you Electrosex 101 today.
Exactly.
Think of it as a crash course.
Yeah.
So you'll walk away knowing the essentials to explore this electrifying world safely and enjoyably. But remember, this is just an intro, so always do your own thorough research.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to equip you with those essentials, using safe equipment, understanding how to use those electric pulses for pleasure, and of course, how to do it all safely.
Because the last thing we want is for you to get zapped in an unpleasant way.
Right.
So let's start with the most important thing, safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Easton Play is all about, well, electricity. And like anything powerful, you have to know what you're doing.
So what are some things we should definitely know before even thinking about plugging in any devices?
Well, the most important thing is understanding the difference between AC and DC currents. Now, eSTEM devices, they use safe AC current, the same kind that you use in your home. DC current, that's what's in batteries, and it's not something you want running through your, shall we say, sensitive areas.
Okay, so AC current, our friend, DC current, not so much. What makes AC safer for this kind of play?
It all comes down to how the electricity flows. You see, AC current changes direction really fast, and that's what creates those tingly sensations we're after. But DC, it flows in just one direction, and that can be much more intense and, well, dangerous. Those early eSTEM devices, they actually used DC current.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it was quickly discovered that AC was much safer and more enjoyable, I'm sure.
I'm sure there was some trial and error in those early days.
I bet. But yeah, thankfully technology's come a long way. Now we have modern eSTEM devices that are designed with safety in mind. That's why it's so important to use devices from reputable sources.
Right, you don't want to mess around with something that hasn't been thoroughly tested.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established that using the right current is, like, crucial. What other precautions are there? I'm guessing location is important.
You're right, location is key. As a general rule, keep electrodes below the waist. This minimizes any risks, especially to your heart.
So no electrifying the elbow. Got it.
Mhm.
Since you mentioned heart safety, are there any conditions that would make eSTEM like a definite no?
Absolutely. If you have a heart condition or a pacemaker, eSTEM is off the table, no questions asked.
Right. We don't want to interfere with any electrical signals already going on in the body. What about pregnancy?
Yeah, good question. There's not a lot of research on eSTEM in pregnancy, so it's best to just avoid it altogether if you're pregnant, trying to conceive, even thinking about it.
Better safe than sorry.
Right.
So sticking with safe AC current, keeping it below the waist, and no eSTEM if you have heart conditions or pregnant. What else?
Oh, this is important. Use equipment that's actually designed for eSTEM play.
Okay.
I know it's tempting to try DIY, but unless you're like an electrical engineer, it's best to just stick with those reputable brands.
Yeah, because when it comes to electricity, I have a feeling a little knowledge can be dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Places like SmartStem are great resources. They've got safe and reliable eSTEM devices, and they even have some DIY designs that are vetted by experts. So if you want to dabble,
Okay.
you can do that safely.
Good to know. Okay, so speaking of being hands-on, what about our skin? Should we do anything to prep it for eSTEM play?
That's a really good point. Your skin is a conductor, so any damage to the skin can really impact the experience. So avoid any broken or irritated skin. Let your body heal first.
So, like, if I have a sunburn, I should probably skip the eSTEM.
Exactly. Let it heal completely before playing with electricity. And while we're on the topic of things that don't mix, let's talk about short circuits.
Ooh, yeah, those are never good.
Right. You have to be super careful with your electrode cables.
Okay, what do we need to look out for?
Make sure that your electrode cables don't touch each other, especially when the power is on.
What happens if they do?
You risk frying your equipment, and nobody wants that.
Especially if it's an expensive piece of equipment. Is it dangerous or more of a, whoops, I broke it situation?
Well, it could be both. Best case, you just blow a fuse and need to replace something. Worst case, you could get a nasty shock, maybe even damage the device beyond repair.
Noted. Avoid touching those cables. Anything else?
One last thing. Always, always, always turn off the power before applying or removing your electrodes. Trust me.
That's speaking from experience.
Let's just say I'm very familiar with that rule.
Laughter.
It's much more pleasant to ease into those sensations.
I can only imagine. That makes a lot of sense. So we're sticking to safe AC current, keeping things below the waist, and avoiding eSTEMs if we have any heart conditions or are pregnant. We're using the right equipment for the job, we're avoiding DIY unless we really know what we're doing,
Okay.
and we're making sure to keep those cables from touching. That sounds pretty comprehensive for safety. What about the actual materials we're using for eSTEM?
Yeah, just like the current, you want to make sure those are safe too. Yeah, so with commercially available electrodes, you're generally good if you stick to those reputable brands. But it's always smart to double check, look at what they're made of.
Right.
Yeah, things like aluminum,
Okay.
stainless steel, conductive rubber.
Okay.
Those are all excellent choices. They conduct well and they're body safe.
So those are our green lights.
Yeah.
Aluminum, stainless steel, and conductive rubber. What about the more DIY route? Are there any materials we should just completely steer clear of?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to DIY, it's best to err on the side of caution.
Right.
Alloys can be a bit risky because of something called molecular migration.
Okay.
Basically, what happens is tiny, tiny particles of the metal can actually end up in your body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So not good.
No, not good at all. So yeah, sticking with those three materials is your best bet.
Yeah. So we want to be safe. What's so special about conductive rubber anyway? I've seen it mentioned a few times.
Yeah, it's great. Conductive rubber is really versatile.
Okay.
It's flexible, so it's comfortable for things like cock rings, but it's also really durable.
Yeah.
So you can find pre-made conductive rubber electrodes in like all sorts of shapes and sizes, or you can even, get crafty and make your own.
Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it's safe for our bodies, which is the number one most important thing.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to ask, because I saw this in the research, what is a DD electrode? Laughter.
Oh, I had to ask.
Yeah, that's a fun little name for a particular type of DIY electrode using, you guessed it, conductive rubber.
Okay.
It's designed for, let's just say, internal stimulation.
Okay.
And it's a great example of just how versatile that material can be.
I love it. Well, I'm adding conductive rubber to my list of things to pick up. So we've got the right equipment. We understand the whole AC current thing. We've got our body safe materials. But before we get into the really fun part,
Where to put these electrodes.
Yeah.
I think we need like a crash course in how the eSTEM circuit actually works.
you're right. Understanding the basics can really enhance your play, and it can also help you troubleshoot if you're having any issues.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So walk us through. What are the parts?
It's actually simpler than you think.
Okay.
So you've got four main components.
Okay.
First, you have your power source, which is your eSTEM control box.
Yeah.
This is like the command center for, all your electrifying adventures.
I love it. That's where the magic happens, so to speak.
Exactly.
What's next?
Next, you have your connecting cables.
Okay.
These are like the bridges that carry that electrical current from the control box to your electrodes.
Literally making the connection.
Exactly. And speaking of connections, that brings us to component number 3, the electrodes themselves.
Okay.
These are the points of contact that actually deliver the sensation to your body. They're usually made of, those body-safe materials that we talked about.
Yeah. So we've got the power source, the cables, the electrodes. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
You.
Wait, really?
Your body completes the circuit.
So I'm like a walking conductor.
In a way, yeah. You're like this important part of the electrical loop.
Yeah.
To make it a little more relatable, imagine like a simple circuit with a battery, wires, a bulb holder, and a bulb. The battery is like our control box. The wires are the cables. That bulb holder represents the electrodes, and you're the bulb.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. Suddenly feeling very illuminated over here.
It's all about making those connections. But in all seriousness, understanding those basic components can really help you, like I said, troubleshoot any issues and play more safely.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. Or in this case, knowledge is pleasurable tingles.
Laughter.
So we've laid that groundwork. Let's talk about the types of electrodes.
Absolutely. Because the type of electrode you choose will determine the kind of sensations you're going for and where you want to feel them.
Because I'm assuming there's more than one way to conduct this orchestra.
Oh, absolutely. There are 2 main types of electrodes, monopole and bipolar.
Okay.
And the main difference comes down to how many contact points they have.
Okay. This is interesting. Tell me more.
So monopole electrodes, they have a single contact surface.
Okay.
So to complete the circuit, you'll need 2 of them.
Okay.
One for the current to enter, one for the current to exit.
So it's like a two-way street for the electrical pulses.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. What about bipolar?
Bipolar electrodes have 2 contact surfaces built in. That means you only need 1 per channel on your control box.
Okay.
So it's self-contained.
So it's like a one-stop shop for sensation.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so can you give us some examples for those of us who are like visual learners? What did these actually look like in action?
Sure. So Monopole electrodes, a really common example is self-adhesive pads.
Right.
You've probably seen these used in medical settings, like for EKGs.
Right.
They're affordable, easy to find, and super versatile because you can use them in different spots.
That makes sense.
Another example is conductive rubber cock loops.
Penis play.
Mm-hmm.
We're all adults here. You can say penis.
Right, penis play.
Yes.
These loops go around the base of the penis to deliver those sensations.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about bipolar electrodes? Those sound intriguing.
Yeah, so these are often insertable, and they're used for vaginal or anal play.
Okay.
They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but they all have those 2 contact points built right in.
So we're getting into really interesting territory now. We're finally at placement.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just what you use, it's where you use it, right?
Placement is key. It can make all the difference.
I bet. Let's start with some options for, let's say, vaginal or labia play. Okay, so let's talk placement for vaginal or labia play.
So a popular option, especially for beginners, is to use 2 monopole adhesive pads, and you just put one on either side of the vulva.
Okay, so kind of like creating that circuit, right?
Exactly.
And that's a good place to start if you're new to this type of play.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of ease into it. Because you can control the intensity really easily, you can move them around a bit, see what feels best.
Yeah.
And you can even still use your hands or toys, for some additional stimulation. Now, if you want something a little more, I guess, pinpointed,
Okay.
then you'd want to go with bipolar electrodes for vaginal insertion.
When you say pinpointed, you mean?
Let's just say the term ghost fucking gets thrown around a lot in the community when we're talking about this kind of stimulation.
That definitely piques my interest. It sounds like a lot to explore, just with the vaginal and labial sensations. What about anal play?
Yeah, anal play with e-stim can be really amazing.
Okay.
And for all genders,
Okay.
most commonly, it's using a bipolar electrode and it's inserted into the rectum.
Okay.
The sensations are very, fulfilling, It can be enjoyed on its own, or you can incorporate it into, BDSM play.
And to be clear, when we say anal play, we mean, this is for anyone, regardless of gender identity.
Absolutely. E-stim is for everyone.
I love that.
So, yeah, explore those anal sensations. Don't be shy.
Okay. So we've talked about vaginal play, anal play. What about penis play?
Yes, of course. So for penis play, we talked about those conductive rubber cock loops.
Yeah.
Those are a great option. A pretty common placement is 2 loops, one around the base of the penis and then the other further down the shaft or even around the testicles.
Oh.
Yeah, you can create some really interesting sensations by stimulating different areas at the same time.
Again, that conductive rubber being key for comfort and safety.
Yes, exactly. Another option is to use a bipolar electrode inserted anally and then combine that with a cock loop, maybe around the testicles.
Mm-hmm.
This can create a very, let's just say it's very intense and multisensory.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot. We did vaginal play, anal play, penis play. What about nipple play?
Right. So nipple play, this is where it gets a little tricky in terms of safety. Remember we talked about avoiding the chest area?
Yeah, go to the heart.
Exactly. So if you are going to explore nipple play with e-stim, it's really, really important to isolate each nipple. And you can do that using bipolar electrodes.
Okay.
So you can get special nipple clamps that are actually designed for e-stim.
Oh, wow.
Or you can use those monopole pads and very, very carefully place them on either side of the nipple.
Got
A
it.
key is you don't want to pass any current across the chest.
Okay. So doable, but requires extra caution and the right equipment. It seems like the theme throughout all of this is just safety first.
100%. And listen to your body. E-stim should never be painful. Start low, go slow. And don't be afraid to experiment. There are so many ways to play with e-stim. Just figure out what works for you.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for breaking down the world of e-stim. We've talked about equipment, electrode types, placement, everything. And remember, this is just Electrosex 101. There's a whole world of sensations out there, so experiment safely, have fun, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.